Hey everybody, welcome back to the Author Code videocast. I am your host, Tim Knox. I am an author, an editor, a publisher, an entrepreneur, and an avid note taker. I don't know if you can see that, but a lot of people would use computers to take notes. I just do everything by hand. And so anyway, the reason I have all these notes today is I got a question in one of the forums that they would like me to address how I develop the characters for my books, for Sins of the Father, Angel of Mercy, and for several other books. As you may or may not know, I've written well over 50 books, ghostwritten quite a few, edited quite a few. So I think I have a pretty good idea about how to develop very strong characters, and that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you develop strong characters that add to the story rather than detract from it? Strong characters who actually play a part in the story. A lot of times I'll see books with characters and I'll be reading the book and I'm like, why is this person here? Why are they even in the story? So I want to talk about today how I develop characters, and by no means is my way the only way. This is just what works for me. You may come up with something completely different, but for me, I start out with what I call a character profile. And basically, that's exactly what it sounds like. It is a profile of the character that really details the character in every way that I can think of. For example, the name of the character. I spend a lot of time on names because, believe it or not, names are very descriptive and symbolic, and they can come to represent a character's personality. So in a minute, I want to talk about, the power of names. There are good names or strong names and weak names, and how you should use a name that represents your character. So as I create my character development, and I'm looking at my notes here, I really create a biography of the character. Now, I do this with bullet points, and I also do it with descriptive text. Bullet points will include things like age, date of birth, when were they born, what were their parents' name? How many siblings did they have? What were their names and ages? What was the sex, the race, their height, their weight at the time of the story? You need to get as descriptive as you can about how your character looks, and you want to get as descriptive as you can about where your character has come from, because the background of the individual determines how the character will act and interact. And that's the thing. You've got to come to think of your characters as people, as real people. I talk to authors all the time who talk about how their characters are so real in their mind that when they write those characters, they can actually picture the character do it. And I can do that. It plays like a movie in my mind. Your characters have to be so real that you think you could pick up the phone and give them a call. So start with a character profile. Again, do everything in the biography there. Talk about important dates in their life that are going to come into play in the story. If their college days are important, well, what were the years that they went to college? What was the year and how old were they when they met their significant other? Or how old were they when this other interesting thing happened to them? You really want to detail everything you can think of. I mean, you don't have to go down to shoe size unless shoe size plays a part in the story, but you want to know as much as you can about a character, from a physical description, a biographical description, their family, where they're from, how were they raised. Many books with serial killers detail that the serial killer had a terrible childhood. So if that's the case, you need to document that. The more you can come up with and the more you put down on paper about a character, the easier it will be for you to write for that character in that character's voice. And I think that's a very important point. Is I see so many authors who will develop a character or spend a lot of time developing a character and then have the character do something completely out of character. That's why it's called out of character, because it's uncharacteristic for a character to do. I'm sure all of us have done things that were out of character for us, like when I try to do difficult math problems, completely out of character. But when you're writing a book, if your character does something that is completely out of character, it could throw your reader off. Now, if that character doing something out of character that is vital to the story, that's a completely different aspect. But you try to keep your character within the confines of the world and the background that you have developed for them. Other things to ask about when you are developing characters is, what role does this character play in the story? Typically, you're going to have main characters, a handful, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're going to have a lot of secondary characters or bit players, as I call them, who have, they'll appear, they'll do something in the story, and then they go away, and you may never see them again. You don't have to spend as much time backgrounding those kind of characters because they don't play as vital a role in the story. But all of your main characters should be profiled. So work on that. You can do it with bullet points, age, sex, weight, height, and then do descriptive text. Talk about, how do they look? What's their hair like? Their eyes, their skin? Are they fat? Are they thin? Do they wear suits? Do they wear blue jeans? A good way I thought to give you an example of how I do it is to give you a couple of examples out of Angel of Mercy. What I like to do when I introduce a character is I introduce that character through the eyes of the person who is just seeing that character. For example, in my book, the hero of the book, Angel of Mercy, available on Amazon, Matthew Cruz is sitting in the lobby. He's waiting for someone to come get him to take him to a meeting with this Hollywood producer. And he sees this young lady coming toward him. And this is the way that he describes it. Now, remember, you are not describing the character. The character is being described, in this case, by the person seeing the character. Now, if you, as the narrator, as the third person point of view person, is describing the character, you would probably do so in much more common terms. It wouldn't be your impression. You would just say, he was a tall man with blue eyes. You wouldn't say he was tall, dark, and handsome with striking eyes, the color of the ocean. That's something another character would say. Does that make sense? The way you describe a character in your book depends on who is describing the character. Is it you, the narrator, or is it someone in the book? In my case, it was someone in the book. And I'm going to read this right now. He, again, was sitting in a lobby waiting on someone to come get him. And I'm not very good at reading my own work. So across the lobby, a set of elevator doors opened, and a pretty girl who didn't look like she was spat from the Hollywood mold headed my way. She was wearing faded jeans and a black t-shirt with the Blue Men Group on the front and a pair of black Converse tennis shoes with lavender trim. She wasn't like other girls you'd meet in Los Angeles on any given day. Her makeup was modest, not slathered on with a trowel. And you have to remember, ladies, that this is a description coming from a male character. So these are the things that he notices and are important to him. She wasn't pierced anywhere that I could see other than her earlobes, or wearing clothes that were 3 sizes too small. There was no overinflated boobs struggling to break free from the top of her blouse, and no Botox tracks on her face. She was a natural beauty with welcoming green eyes that were aimed in my direction. So again, this is a 35-year-old man sitting in a lobby waiting for someone to come take him to a meeting. He looks up and he sees this girl, and this is how he describes her. Now, if I was describing her just as the narrator, I wouldn't be as descriptive as he is, because he is talking about things that he notices with his eyes. And you'll notice I talk about my characters like they're real people. One other one, when he gets into the meeting with someone he hadn't seen in a while, this is how he describes him. He was wearing wrinkled chinos and a black polo with the collar upturned. His feet were bare on the thick carpet. There were a pair of well-worn loafers kicked off in front of the desk. I did not see socks. He didn't look like the most powerful man in the business, but looks can be deceiving. He let go of my hand and motioned for me to sit in one of the overstuffed chairs. It had been a couple of years since I'd seen him up close. He was in his mid-40s now, a little gray showing at the temples, some faint webbing at the corners of the eyes, but still a good-looking man, even by Hollywood standards. So you see, what I tried to do there was not only give the reader a description of the person, but also give the reader an impression of that person's personality through the eyes of my narrator, who was a 35-year-old man. So I much prefer doing that rather than just saying, well, he was 6 foot tall, 145 pounds with blue eyes. If you can throw in things like his hair, is his hair mussed up or is his hair neat? How are his clothes? Are his clothes neatly pressed? Or is he wearing a polo shirt or a t-shirt? Little things like that in your description give the reader very important insight, I believe, into the character. Now, some of my favorite writers give very little description because they want the reader to imagine that person on their own. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just believe that if you give them just a hint of this person's looks and personality, it's a better book. But again, that is my opinion. Talked a few minutes ago about the power of names. When you're naming your character, always think about some names are strong and some names are weak. Now, for men, you know, the strong men, there's Jack, Nick, Damien, Dylan, Logan. Those are very strong macho names, and you see and hear them a lot in books. Now, some very weak names, Tim. My name would make a lousy character. Bill, Ray. Common names that really are what I call generic, actually, do not play well with characters unless they fit the character. There's a wonderful book. I don't recall the author, but it's Bill the Vampire is the character, and Bill fits that character perfectly because he's like a nerdy computer engineer type. He's not a Damien or a Dylan, which connotates visions of men with rippling muscles and tribal tattoos. Same is true with women. Keep in mind, names often will intone in the reader's mind a certain character. For example, Tiffany, Whitney, Bitsy. Those kind of names tell a reader there's probably not a rocket scientist named Tiffany. Now, there may be. Nothing wrong with that. But again, names tell the reader different things. Nowadays, you see a lot of strong female names like Haley, Kylie, Jenna, Marina. These sort of things. So as you are naming your characters, you want the name to fit the character's profile, what the character is going to do in the book. And if it's good, if it's a strong hero, you don't want the name to be like Lou. Thank God Lou is here. Lou has come to save the day. Or chances are a hot 18-year-old female is not going to be named Gertrude, which is my mother's name, by the way. So that's how I do it. I create character profiles. I look at, okay, what are the looks? What are the personality? What's the background? And more to the point, what role do they play within this story? Because that is going to shape that character, not only in the book, but in the reader's mind. All right. So I hope that was helpful. Everybody does it a different way. You may not agree with how I do it, and that is absolutely your prerogative. This is just what works for me. Now, once you do set the stage for your character, for example, when I was describing the young lady whose name was Sierra, by the way, in the book, her look is going to come into play later when they interact, because the look she had really did reflect her personality quite a bit with the Blue Man Group t-shirt and the Converse tennis shoes. So later on in the book, she shows up wearing a little black dress with high heels. And the character is like, whoa. So anyway, hope that was helpful. Hey, if I can help you in your writing, or you've got a question about really anything to do with writing, publishing, Kindle, Amazon, you name it, love to hear from you. Drop a question in the comments below. Please subscribe to this channel because I do these videos quite often. And once you click the subscribe button, you're going to see a little bell that you can click on. And if you do that, you'll be notified every time I have a new video up. So, all right, that is going to do it. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear your thoughts on how you develop your characters. Again, feel free to drop it in the comments below. And I will see you next time on the Author Code Videocast. Have a great day.